Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite nicknames from Chris Berman, because he nicknamed him after a Jay Giles Band song.
Yep.
Instead of First I Look at the Purse, First I Look at the Hearst.
Oh, that's beautiful. And we're back at the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Quinn, with my friend Dom DiTolla. We're just going to talk about some sports. Let's get right into it.
Let's do it. We're doing NFL action with a very fantastic running back who had quite the roller coaster career, Garrison Hearst.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of like a standard career for a running back. It's just like doing great, injury, doing great, injury. Like, how do you stay healthy as a running back? That's my question.
It's weird to think when you look at his final numbers because, like, he had almost 8,000 rushing yards, but the time lost to injuries, you could make a good argument if he produces during those missed games, because these are games not missed at the end. These are games missed when he should be on the prime of his career. He could be a borderline Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah.
With everything all said and done.
But I feel like that's with a lot of guys. Staying healthy is one of the most important things, especially in the NFL.
Oh, definitely. But Garrison Hearst, born January 4th, 1971 in Lincolnton, Georgia. And like most people growing up in that state, football is king. Football is king and is immediately a star once he gets to Lincoln County High School, breaking several state records for football. And during this era, when you're the best running back in the state of Georgia, you want to go to a place nearby that has established itself as a running back factory for the NFL.
Well, it has to be a easy path that he can see. Him being, because he was all-state running back. So
Yeah.
like it's kind of obvious he's just like, I'm gonna stay right here in Georgia.
Well, it makes sense because starting with Herschel Walker in 1980, I mean, then you move into the Lars Tate era, then you move into the Tim Worley era, and then you move into the Rodney Hampton era. Garrison Hearst is the next guy on deck.
Yeah.
1990, as the program is kind of going through a transitional period because Vince Dooley's been gone. They go 4-7, and in 1990 is kind of the year where he's just kind of getting his feet wet. So 717 rush yards and 5 touchdowns, and like I said before, the team's only 4-7. They're starting heading into 91 though. They've moved, kind of transitioned from this power I backfield into a more diverse offensive scheme.
Okay.
Because in 91, they end up, and this is one of the first true quarterbacks who skips their last semester of high school. It's Eric Zier. And he's like one of the most coveted quarterback recruits. He later plays in the NFL for the Browns and the Ravens. He's a good college quarterback, not so much in the pros, but I mean, they want to modernize their offense a lot. And it really fits a back like Hearst who can do so many different things, run out of so many different formations and help with the passing game.
Yeah,
and they're accumulating all sorts of offensive talent. Andre Hastings, who had a good career with the Steelers, is playing for them. He was like a number 1 recruit out of high school. They have a really solid offensive line and good defense. Like you can see Georgia finally being built again.
And that was the thing is that I saw was he is a back with a lot of different skills, and if you're not utilizing it, it's almost detrimental.
And it's not like he has one particular elite area. He just does everything well. Like he's a good power back when you want him to be. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. Not necessarily like a Marshall Faulk where you can split him out in the slot or outside the numbers, but like anything related to the passing game, great hands, super reliable, smart, knows how to run routes properly. But probably his best attribute is he's a really good one-cut runner, and he's a really good runner at vision, reading the field, and making his own yards. And shifting gears, too, is a big thing for him.
Yeah.
Where he can cut, make a move, and still kind of maintain that same speed, and that's where he gets away from defenders. And in 1991, the team rapidly improves. They go 9-3. They win the Independence Bowl, and they're ranked 17 at the end of the year. And Hearst has kind of established himself as the team's best running back, has almost 1,000 yards on the ground, 968, 9 touchdowns, and then 177 receiving yards, so he has 1,000 all-purpose for the season.
Yeah, so it's obvious he's a tool in this new Georgia,
And this is still when the SEC is pound the rock. It's completely pound the rock. And they've established themselves in the SEC East as the team with Tennessee to kind of compete with Florida as they're starting their run of dominance.
And then we get into the 92 season where he
balls out.
Yeah.
And the team balls out around him. I mean, they're a really successful team in 92. They go 10-2. They're ranked number 8 at the end of the year, and they win the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's where, and this is his third season, this is where everyone starts noticing Garrison Hearst because he's putting up video game stats in the SEC.
Yes.
And dominating opponents.
Well, the stats that I saw that I thought were ridiculous was over 1,500 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns, which is such a ridiculous stat, like you said, in the SEC. That
well, it's 6.8 yards a carry, which is really impressive. But he has 22 catches for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. And by the end of the year, everybody's just salivating over this dude because he has the size, 5'11", about 215, 220, and the speed and all of the necessary tools you would want in any running back that you have, I would say. And when we get into his pro career, he finds his niche where all of those diverse sets of skills are utilized best in a West Coast offense.
Yes.
And granted, we'll see that down the line, but by the end of the year, he finishes third in the Heisman voting. The only 2 people ahead of him are Gino Torretta, who, thanks to ESPN, stole the award away from Marshall Faulk, which is complete and total bullshit. I watched every Aztecs game that year. Best player in college football. Go fuck yourself, Lee Corso, and shove it straight up your old ass.
I liked it.
I'm sorry, but I just had to say that. But because Falk is a true sophomore, he can't enter the 93 draft, which leaves Hearst as the best, most coveted running back prospect in the entire draft pool.
Oh, yeah.
And because of this, many people think he's going to be a top 10 pick. A little information comes out before the draft, though, that he's torn his ACL on his left knee.
Oh, really?
He has an ACL injury. So there's like scuttlebutt considering like, man, do we take this guy? I mean, he played the whole season with an injured knee. That doesn't stop the Phoenix Cardinals, because they're still the Phoenix Cardinals. They haven't even rebranded themselves. Vagabond franchise. Chicago, St. Louis, Phoenix, Arizona. Just pick a name and stick with it, please. But they actually trade up one spot to the 3rd overall pick, and they take Garrison Hearst, assuming he's going to be the next great running back in the league. Unfortunately for Hearst, a knee injury basically wipes out most of his rookie year.
Yep.
In 1993, he's limited to 6 games, has only 264 rushing yards and a touchdown. He has less than 4 yards a carry. And after the 93 season, which I think is super important to bring up, Buddy Ryan is hired after Joe Bugle is fired as the team's head coach. Buddy Ryan wants to bring in his own guys to coach his football or to play for his football team. He doesn't have a lot of faith in Garrison Hearst, and by that offseason, he's trade bait already. While they don't end up trading him in the 94 draft, they take Fiesta Bowl hero and probably the last time U of A had a dominant team, Chuck Levy, in the 2nd round. Chuck Levy, an enormous bust in the NFL. He barely played. It doesn't matter because in 94, Hearst is hurt again.
Oh, yeah.
He injures his knee again. He's limited that season to only 8 games, and he rushes for less than 200 yards, has 1 throwing touchdown and 1 rushing touchdown. So Buddy Ryan is basically just had it at this point with Garrison Hearst.
Seems like Arizona's just not using him to what he should be.
Well,
he's being injured. Yeah.
And in 94, one of their draft picks from that draft, in addition to Levy, Ronald Moore, is the team's leading rusher. I mean, he came out of nowhere to lead that team along with Larry Centers, who was an amazing pass-catching fullback, to kind of be the backfield options for Arizona. So heading into 95, you're thinking, where is this guy's career going to go because of all these injuries and guys stealing playing time? But to his credit, and this is why I wanted to do this episode, adversity brings out the best in a player like Garrison Hearst.
Yeah.
It really does. Because in 95, despite the team being 4-12, this is his breakout season. This is where he finally realizes his true potential, plays in all 16 games, starts 15 of them, has 284 carries, which I believe is more than his first 2 seasons combined, and he's their bell cow. He has 1,070 rushing yards, only one rushing touchdown because the offense is so crappy, but 29 catches, 243 yards, and a receiving touchdown. So you're thinking, oh my God, we finally have a running back. Let's just find a competent quarterback to play for our team.
And this is where I find it so ridiculous is he has a great season, and then the Cardinals are like, all right, we're going to cut you.
Hey, everybody. Just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs. Well, he was named the 1995 Pro Football Writer Association's Comeback Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. After the 95 season, Buddy Ryan is fired, and they bring in a Buddy Ryan disciple in Vince Tobin. Tobin wants his own guys. And in the 96 draft, they take with, I think, the 32nd overall pick. It's somewhere in the early 30s. It's at the top of the second round. We had talked about this in our 96 draft episode, the Leland McElroy thing, where he's the last guy in the green room.
Oh, yeah.
They took electric Leland McElroy, who eventually became a huge NFL draft bust. And by the end of training camp, they cut Garrison Hearst. I don't know if it's a financial thing or if they wanted their own guy, but basically, he doesn't have a team after 3 years in the NFL.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. To their credit, because they don't have a lot of depth at running back, because you have a scat back and situational player like Eric Bieniemy, and you have Kajana Carter, the number 1 overall pick in the 95 draft, coming off of a knee injury, a torn ACL, which he suffered in the preseason of 95. Hearst is able to join the Cincinnati Bengals in 1996 and keep his career alive. And luckily for him, despite the team starting off 1-6, he's able to parlay that opportunity on an offense which was actually good. The team finishes 6-2 down the stretch after Dave Shule is fired and Bruce Coslett comes in. You've drafted Willie Anderson on your offensive line. Jeff Blake is throwing moonshots at quarterback. You have Pickens, Carl Pickens, who was a Pro Bowler leading the AFC in receptions during this era. Darnay Scott, SDSU alum, just burning up the field as your other deep threat and another great receiver. And Hearst actually benefits from this on a team that finishes 8-8 and 500. That was probably the best season the Bengals had during the 1990s. And at the end of that season, he's able to accumulate 847 rushing yards on 225 carries, has 12 catches for 131 yards and 1 touchdown, but he had no touchdowns rushing.
Oh, yeah.
Because Carter was the inside the 20s back. And after that season, Cincinnati's kind of being like, okay, well, do we bring him back? Do we not bring him back? Because he's only on a 1-year deal because he had been cut by Arizona. In March, because Hearst is a free agent, he decides he wants to go somewhere where his talents are better utilized. And him leaving obviously leads to the Bengals drafting Corey Dillon in the second round of 97. And on March 8th, 1997, Hearst signs a 2-year deal with the San Francisco 49ers. And this is a coup for San Francisco. So what basically happens is, after the 94 season, when they win Super Bowl 29 with Ricky Watters, who should be in the Hall of Fame, who's probably, outside of Roger Craig, the best West Coast running back to have ever played in the NFL, he leaves as a free agent to the Philadelphia Eagles in 1995. 95 and 96 for the 49ers are really a struggle to find that main running back in the offense, coupled with the injury of versatile fullback William Floyd during 1995, where his knee basically just exploded. So, they're trying out guys like Derek Lavelle, who was a good backup running back for the 49ers and later the Broncos. You'd bring in touchdown Tommy Vardell, who was a huge Belichick draft bust in Cleveland, who was more relegated to being a fullback later in his career. And then they tried and failed to sign Rodney Hampton. They also, failed with the Johnny Johnson experiment. So 97, when they pick up Hearst, they're just like, this team can still contend for Super Bowls. We can be good. We just need that guy. And Hearst emerges as that player.
Yeah, definitely.
And in 97, the 49ers, despite a season-ending injury to Jerry Rice in week 1, they have a pretty darn good season. They're actually the number 1 seed in the NFC. And Hearst is just absolutely balling out for them. He has 1,019 yards on 234 carries, 4 touchdowns, finally over a 4 yards a carry average at 4.4, 194 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. But he really is limited towards the end of the season by a collarbone injury he suffered against the Kansas City Chiefs. But despite their NFC championship loss, I should say, to Green Bay that season, 98, you're still thinking we still got a few more years of good football left in this team. And to their credit, the 49ers in 98, it's almost Hurst's team, and it's almost his team right off the bat, where he is the main running back and one of the best in the NFL, probably not named Terrell Davis, who had over 2,000 yards rushing that season. In fact, he makes the Pro Bowl, and he really starts the season off right. I don't know if you've ever watched this game, Chris. In week 1 at Candlestick, they played this massive marathon against the New York Jets where Vinny Testaverde isn't even playing. It's Glenn Foley. They overcome this huge lead, and Hearst wins the game in overtime with a 96-yard run, basically in the shadow of his own end zone to score a touchdown. And what you see, I just want to bring up on a lot of Hurst's best runs in San Francisco, there's always one receiver busting his ass and hustling down the field on the play on all of these long runs that he has, and even the shorter ones too. And it's a damn shame nobody remembers him for this, because it was a really good skill set he had. It was Terrell Owens. T.O. was just a young player busting it, and Hearst was just running down the sidelines, following these blocks. Like, it was really impressive to watch. And he's just putting up massive stats game after game. It's the first season he's really been healthy his entire career. He has 198 yards against the Lions in Week 15. By the end of the year, he has 310 carries, 1,570 yards, 7 touchdowns rushing. He led the league with a 5.1 yards per carry, 39 catches, 535 yards, and 2 touchdowns, which put him at 2,105 total yards for the season. 12-4 again after I misspoke, 13-3 season the year before. And then in one of the best playoff games ever played, they go against the Green Bay Packers. That's the young to Owens as time expires. And guess who his backup was in that game, Chris?
No, I don't know. Who?
Chuck Levy, who was drafted to replace him in 1994. But Hearst in that game has over 120 rushing yards. And then they're set up to play the Dirty Bird Atlanta Falcons, who won the NFC West that year. Okay? And San Francisco's played them tough. They kind of have the mental edge over Atlanta due to the last decade and a half of football.
And I distinctly remember this. It's
You're
brutal.
thinking if there's going to be any upset on divisional weekend of a road team winning, it'll be San Francisco. And it very well could have been, except on the first play of the game. What happens, Chris?
In the Georgia Dome, on the turf, it's such a ridiculously bad injury. He sprains and just pretty much like puts his ankle in a
vice. Essentially.
Yes, that's perfect, because it is disgusting the way it looks.
It's gruesome. It's one of the, I've seen more gruesome football, like Theismann's leg injury. I've never seen a more gruesome ankle injury in football in my entire life. And this injury is so bad that during complications of surgery, he suffers what is known as in the medical profession as avascular necrosis, which basically just means no blood causing whatever area to die.
Yes, it's pretty much whatever area is dying.
Yeah, and what they've come to find out is he has a vascular necrosis in his foot, and they have to remove his talus bone in his foot because of this ankle injury. And for those of you who aren't familiar, a vascular necrosis is what Bo Jackson suffered when he basically destroyed his hip in 1991 with the Raiders. And the reason I bring this up is Bo Jackson never played football again. Granted, you need your hip probably a little bit more. Garrison Hearst, he could have retired right there and nobody would have given a shit. And nobody would have talked shit about him because it's like, well, hey, a bone died in your foot. But guess what? He starts the rehab process. And 2 years later, he sits out in 99 and 2000. He returns to the San Francisco 49ers in 2001 and is the first player ever to return from a vascular necrosis on any injury in the NFL.
Which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, after 2 years of rehab, he comes back.
Yeah, and in 2001, he does something pretty incredible, I think. He balls out for the 12-4 49ers. Completely balls out. He not only makes his second Pro Bowl, he wins the Comeback Player of the Year award again by the Pro Football Writers Association of America. And starts all 16 games, 1,206 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, career high 41 catches, another touchdown. The team made the playoffs. Granted, while they lost to the Packers at Lambeau, he scored a touchdown in a playoff game without a bone in his foot. I can't even believe that. And then in 2002, now he's kind of come into a point in his career. He's in his early 30s. While the wear and tear isn't necessarily there as far as numbers of carries, the injuries are kind of taking their toll, but he still has a really good season. 972 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. 317 receiving yards and a touchdown. And they win another. It seems like he's in all these incredible playoff games. He's playing against the New York Giants. The team is down by 24 in the second half. And they come all the way back. This is the big Terrell Owens game, you know what I'm talking about, where he just completely balls out in the second half. New York misses some opportunities. There's that weird field goal at the end of the game where pass interference should have been called on an eligible receiver. And they win 39-38 after being down 38-14. Granted, the next week they play the eventual Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the divisional round in Tampa and get absolutely throttled. They couldn't get anything going on offense or defense. And they lose 31-6. 2003 for Hearst, this is kind of where you see everything like, just his productivity going down and his chances to carry the ball go down because he's obviously splitting time with the young Kevin Barlow, who was a decent power back for them during this era. Starts 12 games, 768 rush yards, 3 touchdowns, 35 catches, and a touchdown. But San Francisco really bottoms out under new head coach Dennis Erickson, who we brought up during one of our episodes for the 2000 Oregon State Beavers. You should check that shit out. That's actually where he came from before he was in San Francisco, was Oregon State. And at age 33 in 2004, he signs with the Denver Broncos as sort of a specialist back. And limited by injuries with a broken hand. Scored 1 touchdown on the ground, but rushed for 81 yards. And really, that he ended up calling it a career after that season. But not a lot of controversy with him. Settled in Georgia, wife and 4 kids. But in 2002, he ran into a little hot water. Granted, this is before cancel culture was a thing. I don't even like using that term. He said some pretty disparaging things after former Packers and Falcons defensive tackle Asera Tuolo came out of the closet as a homosexual. And when asked by the Sacramento Bee whether he would accept a gay teammate, he said, "Hell no," quote, I'm quoting here, "I don't want any faggots on my team. I know this must not be what people want to hear, but that's a punk. I don't want any faggots in this locker room," which is completely terrible. I'm sure as time has gone on, his views have changed. But immediately after, he was required to apologize, which he should have and did. But right now, he's currently surrounds the Georgia football program. Another one of the guys in their long line of power backs and good running backs that they had from the 80s up through the 90s. Turtle Davis actually was the guy who replaced him at Georgia, who I alluded to earlier in the podcast. But a fantastic career. He had almost 10,000 career yards from scrimmage during the 12 years. Well, not even 12. It would probably only be 10 that he played in the NFL. So like I had said before with Chris, that the amount of time that he missed, we could be talking about a guy who might be in Canton if 4 of those 10 seasons weren't completely wiped away due to injury. So Anyway, everybody, thanks for listening. That was Garrison Hearst.
Hey everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.